Alright, so the next order of business is supplying oil to the turbos. I've got them hung, I've got all the piping taken care of, and I need to figure out how to adapt this to the oil, to feed the turbos with oil. So most C6 Corvettes have a block that bolts over directly above the oil filter with these two bolts right here, and it just blocks off the pressure and return lines. You can see right here, there's two holes, one's pressure, one's return. This actually supplies my oil cooler on my car. Mine actually has the track package, so it has a transmission cooler and an oil cooler built into the radiator. Like I alluded to earlier, I actually had to replace the radiator, and that radiator was an extra $200 because it actually has the oil cooler and transmission cooler built into it. Well, there's also various blocks online. You can take the factory oil block off and bolt a new one on, and it's got a pressure and return line. None of them are made to adapt this oil pressure or this oil block for the oil cooler option. Not any that I could find anyways, and they're all anywhere between $70 and $150, which is silly because if I put, this guy is actually about that far from the catalytic converter, which runs at, the operating temperature for a catalytic converter is like 1200 degrees. And so I didn't want to put it even closer to the catalytic converter, then it defeats the purpose of having an oil cooler. So what I decided to do instead is, I saw this guy right here. I had no idea what it was, so I took this whole thing off. I looked down inside here. You unbolt this. I couldn't find any information about this online, but when you unbolt this, it's just a plug, and down inside there is a some kind of check valve. The best I can tell is some kind of check valve, and if you look down, it actually bridges the two passages. So I think what probably happens, if you have some kind of pressure blockage in this side, it just bleeds into the other side. I'm not really sure. But so I couldn't use this because this is actually the return and this one is the pressure. So what I decided to do is just tap in, drill a hole and tap in right there. I got me an NPT 18 thread, which is what comes with this Phobia Street kit, and drilled and tapped a hole, and so it fits down inside there. So uber fail. I got everything put inside there, went to put it in the car, and the same reason that I didn't want to buy a big block to space this thing out, this won't fit. So it actually sticks out and butts up against the catalytic converter. Now earlier I had planned to drill the hole here, just like this, and I just didn't do it because I was in a hurry. I was borrowing some equipment from somebody to drill and tap everything, and I just got in a hurry and things didn't work out, and I said, well, I'll just drill it over here. And lesson learned, don't get in a hurry when you're doing something like this. So I'm gonna have to patch that hole in. An NTP 18 NPT 1/4x18 drill and tap. So I've got to step drill this hole until it gets large enough to put the tap in it. Oil block fixed. I plugged the hole. I drilled like an idiot with a brass plug. Got my pressure tube ready. And that is a pressure check valve, by the way. If you push on it from this side, it releases and it bleeds over to this side. And this is the return. So that's definitely a pressure check valve. So got that ready. And then on this model LS2, there's a conveniently located relief valve inside the valve cover. And so all I had to do was put my return and put a little coupler pipe right there, and now I've got an oil return. So now jack up the front of the car and put the oil cooler pipes back on and start running my lines to oil the turbo. So I got the oil cooler pipings back installed. So this is what it looks like. In most C6, this is just an aluminum block and that's it. It just blocks off the oil passages and there's nothing going on. So here's my oil pressure line right here. It comes off of the pressure side. So I'm starting to plumb in the oil lines now, and I've got my return line. And I don't really like how wobbly this is, so I'm going to fab up a bracket that goes from this bolt that supports this kind of like that. So I'm going to do that. I'm also going to run the oil lines in the torque tunnel, and this plate right here has like 30 something little 8mm bolts that hold it together. I had to take that down. I had to take the H pipe, kind of one end of the H pipe so that I could drop the H pipe and slide that plate out. But here's something really cool. It has C6 machined in it. Now it's backwards, but if you're looking at it from underneath, you can see it right between the exhaust pipes. So there's just little cool things about that. So every technician who ever works on this thing, if they're up underneath it, will see C6 machined into that little plate. But I don't have the luxury of having a lift, so I'm gonna plumb in the oil lines now. Got my fancy little bracket made right here that supports the return line. It goes back there, and here's my fitting that dumps down inside there. And I did check, that actually goes straight down into the valve cover. I poured a little bit of oil down inside there just to make sure it's not closed off, and it's not closed off. All right, so one thing you have to do is wire a relay in. So what I decided to do is put mine right there, right next to my fuse box. And because I've already got a switched line wired in, so this line gets hot. It's a switched source. As soon as you touch the key, that line goes hot. So it's a switched source, and I can use that to activate my relay. And this is a power junction box, so I can run power to here, and then run switch to here. And then there's a really good body ground right there. So that'll really keep my wiring fairly short, fairly clean. So I got my relay wired in. I've got my wire that goes to the back of the car, goes down through there. I got my signal wire that goes to ground. And then I got my signal wire tied into the fuse box. You can look at other videos I've done to see how I did that on the fuse box here. And then I have my wire going to the main supply. And I chose to use black for everything because I don't want this to stick out. I don't want you to be able to see this whenever I open the hood. I don't want it to stand out. So I need to prime the oiling system since I've got the pump all wired in. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the fuel pump fuse, which is fuse number 20, which happens to be that guy right there. So I've pulled the fuse from right here. Just gonna set it aside. Now the next thing you have to do whenever you're gonna start your motor, because I've started this motor in the past, the fuel pressure inside the lines is enough to make the motor start. So what you have to do is drain your fuel pressure system. And because I've actually got this guy on there, I had to unscrew it and let everything drain out. But there's just a valve stem right there where you can just put a little pressure on the valve stem and bleed the fuel off. I put a big rag underneath there to catch all the fuel. There's probably going to be a good solid cup full in there because, you know, it's the line running from the back of the car all the way to the front of the car, and then all of the fuel rail pretty much has to drain out of there. So that's where I'm at right now. I'm going to try to just start the car just to let the motor spin, but not let the motor start up. That way the oil pump is pumping and it just fills the turbos and it fills all of the oil pressure lines. That way I can make sure there's no leaks. That way I can make sure oil gets all the way to the back of the turbo. I don't want to start the motor of the car. So here goes nothing, Mom. Here's something else about the kit. So these two dump pipes for the wastegates actually have left and right. I didn't notice it. I was thinking, man, this thing comes kind of close to the turbo. I went and got my other wastegate, and they actually have a little bit of an angle to them. All right, so now I'm going to mount this last pipe right here. And I'm trying to get all this stuff in the right places because I started priming my oil system, you know, filling everything up with oil. And then I kind of realized, oh, there's some pieces I need to put in place to make sure my oiling system, all the lines and all the brackets and all the wires are in the right places, because I've still got to put this stuff on there and I need to make sure that everything's in the right spot. So here we go. All right, so I've got the oil line plumbed, got my relay hooked in, make sure I got my battery. Yep, got my battery hooked in, got all the oil lines in the back of the car tightened up. So it's the moment of truth. All right, here we go. I'm gonna start it up, make sure the oil pressure comes up. Pressure, that's normal, 40 psi. Looks like a success, and that's literally the first time I started it with the oil pump on there. So now I'm going to check all the fittings, make sure there's no oil leaks around the fittings, that everything's tight enough, that you know, nothing leaked, and then I'll start securing all the oil lines, making sure that they're exactly where they need to be.